report there by Catherine Norris-Trent, Julie Dunkelhoff and Abdullah Malkawi. Catherine, seeing there, witnessing just one particular interception, but this is a daily occurrence.
Absolutely, especially at the moment, late autumn, back in late October when we were filming this, the crew we were with in Tripoli, just one of the crews in Tripoli, and that's just one of the ports there on the Libyan coast, of course, they told us they'd rescued more than 500 people. Before this interception, they'd brought them back to Libya that week alone. So clearly this is on a massive scale here. Hundreds of people, thousands of people brought back every week to Libyan shores, and then they're sent to detention centres, which are already overcrowded. Libyan authorities telling us they cannot cope, and the conditions in there clearly leave a lot to be desired. This is a huge problem on a massive scale. There are no official figures. As we were saying, the official figures are very sketchy. There's a whole range of detention centres, from the ones officially managed by the Libyan authorities, but we know that their control does not extend even to the whole of Tripoli, let alone the whole western region or the whole state. And there are countless unofficial detention centres, prisons, basements, ghettos, dungeons, where it's thought nearly 1 million people are caught in this trap.
Indeed, and we have seen over the years horrific images of people being treated and sold even as slaves in those detention centres. Now, we heard in your report, Catherine, the Libyan Coast Guard were responding to a call from the European Union.
Absolutely. This was a call made first by Maltese authorities and then by Italy. They called the control room in Tripoli to say there's a migrant boat heading towards Europe. Come and intervene. This is the response of Europe to the massive migration crisis. The Italians have trained the Libyan Coast Guard. The boat we were sailing on was Italian-made. This is being funded by the European Union to stop these migrants getting to their shores. So this is what the Europeans have decided to do about the situation. We spoke to international organisations also about the situation. They are also overwhelmed. There's one centre in Tripoli which is co-managed by the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Programme, but they don't have enough space in it either. And so there really needs to be some kind of international response which fits the scale of this problem.
Indeed. And tell us, meanwhile, Catherine, what was it like to be on board with the Libyan Coast Guard?
Well, we'd heard a lot of reports about the Libyan Coast Guard and questions about their treatment of the migrants. What we saw with the crew we were on, we didn't see mistreatment of the migrants on that boat. We saw there was not enough space on the boat. They did not have life jackets. They said they usually give out life jackets to those they pull from the dinghies. Funded by the UN life jackets, but they'd run out because there were too many migrants at the moment. They had no blankets, food and water. It was a 3.5-hour boat ride back to Tripoli with wind, temperatures getting cold, people there very wet, hungry, a lot of them suffering from hypothermia. So there are clearly huge questions about the conditions in which these people are just being brought back from their dinghies back to port.
Yeah, never mind what happens to these people afterwards. And we did hear for a lot, if not all of them, did not want to return to Libya. I mean, they had taken this very precarious route to try and make it to Europe. The people in your report, a lot of them coming from Sudan, but in Libya from a lot of different regions, really travelling at a huge human and financial cost.
Huge risk and a huge cost too. People we spoke to in detention centres in Libya from various sub-Saharan countries, they told us their families back home had sold their houses and were living on the streets or being sheltered by other people to try and pay for this passage. And all of those I spoke to, whether in detention centres, on the boat, at the port, or just by phone, contacting by WhatsApp other migrants, they say they will keep on trying. I spoke to one young Eritrean man who told me he'd already been in the sea, he'd been put back in prison, he'd had to swim for 6 hours before a fisherman picked him up. His wife, who was 4 months pregnant, had died, but he was going to try again. These people all say they're going to keep on trying no matter what the cost to them.
Indeed, and we saw one man at the end of your report running back towards the sea, and you were telling me even a lot of people taking the risk when they know they can't even swim.
Absolutely. The vast majority of these people cannot swim. They are from very poor backgrounds of sub-Saharan countries. Most of those people on the boat telling us they couldn't swim. When we were there that evening in the port of Tripoli, 2 young men threw themselves back into the water in the port in Tripoli to try and escape, to try and avoid going back to prison, to getting caught in that trap. And we were told that's a common occurrence. The guards were on alert. They were watching them very closely because they said if they turned their backs for an instant, people would throw themselves back in the water in a bid to escape.
Horrific story, Catherine, but thanks indeed for telling us a bit more about it. And of course, those people going back to a country that is embroiled in a long-running conflict, as we've been seeing from the reports from Catherine Norris-Trent, Julie Dungelhoff and Abdullah Malkawi, that we're running a series of reports all this week. Catherine, thanks a lot for coming in.